Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good evening. I'm excited to be here today. Thank you guys for being here. It is 1 minute to 7, and we're glad to have you join us today for our Sunday session of Why We Are Sick. Great, great, great. And we will, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to see where everybody is joining us from. Benjamin Ayuk from Fleming Island, Florida. Keith Newsome, Pensacola, Florida. Um, Welcome. And we have Keith and we have Chopper. Reindeer Alberta. Oh, wow. Alberta, as in Alberta, Canada. Is that correct? What? Wow. Dina, we're glad to have you. I actually know somebody who lives in actually know somebody who lives in that area. It's Alberta is the state, and I think I know somebody who lives in Edmonton. Edmonton. Edmonton is in Alberta. Is that correct? Vicky, hello. Hello. Okay, I'll tell you something, Dina. I have my namesake. He's named Dieter too. He lives in Alberta. And he lives in Edmonton, Alberta. I was named after him. He's in his 90s now. He was a doctor who did some missionary work in Cameroon and worked in Cameroon as a missionary doctor for 35 years. My dad named me after him. His name is Dieter too, and he lives in Edmonton, Alberta. And he's retired now. So good to have a connection out there. Okay, 1.5 hours from Red Deer. Okay, great. Wonderful. Welcome. Good evening. Thank you guys for being here today. If you're joining, just drop a comment in the chat where you're joining us from. It's 7:05. I'm just going to introduce add to a spotlight Dr. Tiffany. Dr. Tiffany is going to be assisting us today, and I need to get Keith. I want to spotlight our panels. Keith, if you will turn your, yeah, thank you. Let me make you co-host, and I'm gonna be spotlighting you. So Keith is gonna be helping us. I'm just Dr. Tiffany is a double board certified physician in lifestyle medicine as well as in family medicine, and she'll be helping us today. Keith is um, a patient who was diabetic for 25 years, as well as had many other medical issues which he has since which have since resolved, and you're gonna hear his testimony. So Keith, thank you for joining us. I see my longtime colleague from North Carolina, Dr. Miller, Derek Miller. I am so glad to see you on here, Dr. Miller. Dr. Miller and I worked together in Duplin County, North Carolina for I think we worked for about 6 years, 7 years together. So, Dr. Miller, I'm glad to see you on here tonight. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Keith and Dr. Tiffany, if you guys see any doctors pop on, maybe Dr. Eston Garrett or Dr. Natasha, please let me know so that I can spotlight them. We're gonna give we're gonna give a couple of minutes at 7:05 for anybody who is joining us a little bit late. Um, um, and we will be starting there. You live in Roseville, Madeline Schwartz. I live in Roseville, Rose Hill, Duplin. Okay, wow, wow, wow. So, Madeline, I worked in Duplin County from 2014 in that hospital until 2021. So 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 20. So almost 7 years. So it's crazy to all the connections that I'm having from somebody in Alberta where my namesake lives to somebody in Duplin County. Great, great, great. I love all these connections. Manvel, Texas, Claudia. Um, Oh, you had already moved to Charlotte by then. Okay. Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, in under a minute from now, we'll be starting. Claudia, welcome. Thank you. Good to see you. It is 7:05 and we already have the record button on. So I am going to go ahead and begin our presentation. I want to thank you guys again for being here tonight, and let us begin. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you guys again very, very much for being a part of this talk tonight. My name is Dr. Dieter. I'm a board certified physician in two fields. I'm an internist as well as a pediatrician. And I have a simple question to begin this presentation. Why are we so sick today? That's the question I'll pose. And the answer is simpler than you think. We are sick today because we eat in ways that harm our body's natural biology. You see, food is supposed to be medicine. Food is medicine, but in the same light, food can be poison. And unfortunately, it is the latter to many of us. We eat in ways that affect two key systems in our body. And what are those two key systems is how our body makes energy and how our gut functions. These two key things are the reason why we are sick today. So, what I want to do today during this presentation is to show you how entity number one relates to why we are sick today, and entity number two relates to why we are sick today. So, let's begin with entity number one, how the body makes energy. Our body makes energy dependent on the hormone insulin. Insulin is a very critical hormone in the body. It is the most important hormone. Every cell in our body has an insulin receptor. Insulin, I consider insulin the CEO of the body. It dictates the smooth functioning of the body. When insulin is working well, everything is working well. Insulin is hormone numero uno, most importante, MVP. And why am I elevating insulin to this degree? It is because of its job. And this is what insulin does. Every time we eat, glucose is released into the blood. Okay. And the job of insulin is to mobilize that glucose out of the blood into the cell. Now, when that glucose is mobilized into the cell by insulin, there is a special organelle in our cell here called the mitochondria. Now, in the mitochondria, you may remember in your junior biology classes, it was termed the powerhouse of the cell. So, in the mitochondria, which is the energy factory, the glucose goes through a complex series of reactions called the electron transport chain and then spits out an molecule here called ATP, which stands for adenosine triphosphate. That's just simply energy. So that is how insulin secures the body's energy needs. Now, I want you to understand that every cell in the body requires energy to function. The smallest entity of the body, which is a cell that groups up to form tissues, which group up to form organs, which group up to form a system, which forms a whole man. Every single cellular entity in the body requires energy to function. When a cell has the energy that it needs to function, it functions well. When a cell doesn't have the energy that it needs to function, it malfunctions. And I say the simplest definition of a disease is a group of cells, tissues, organs, or system that has stopped functioning well because it doesn't have the energy it needs to function well. So this is insulin's job. It sits pivotal in securing the body's energy needs. Now, there is a situation where there is a breakdown in insulin being able to do this job. When there is a breakdown and insulin cannot secure the body's energy needs, we call that breakdown insulin resistance. Okay? Just simply meaning that insulin can no longer secure the body's energy needs. Now, why does that happen? Because we were created perfectly and wonderfully by our Creator. So, how do you go from insulin working properly to insulin now not working well? How do you get the breakdown? And it is because of an excess amount of calories we are consuming today. I put it that simply. Today, we are consuming 35% more calories than our ancestors did, more calories than our ancestors did hundreds of years ago. So we are consuming 35% more calories than our ancestors did hundreds of years ago. What that means is that insulin has to do this job now 35% over time, OT here. So if you had a job, Dr. Tiffany had a job and her employer told her, Dr. Tiffany, I'm going to expect you to work 35% overtime every day. Dr. Tiffany is going to get burnt out. And when Dr. Tiffany gets burnt out, what's going to happen is her efficiency decreases. When her efficiency decreases, she cannot produce or perform the same way. So we are consuming 35% more calories just to give you, which has overwhelmed and inundated our insulin with more work than insulin can do, and insulin has gotten burned out. Just to give you a sense of how much calories we are consuming. They say in a single can of a Coke, of a soda, it may be Coke, it may be Pepsi, maybe 7 Up or what have you, in a single can, there is more sugar in that can than you and I, our ancestors, would have consumed their entire life. So imagine that. So consuming that much amount of calories. So what happens then is this is how you develop insulin resistance because of the consumption of too much calories. There are two ways in which we develop insulin resistance from too much calories. First is what I call accumulation of too much fat. And then the first leads to the second issue, which is too much insulin. And let me explain this way. Too much insulin. You see, a cell is normally supposed to look like this. That's a normal cell. When we consume way more calories than we're supposed to, what happens is the body takes those excess calories and converts them into fat. The body doesn't know what to do with that fat. It now lumps that fat into this cell. So now the cell, instead of being normal, is now lumped with all this fat in the cell. This cell now becomes what I call a fat-laden cell. When this cell is a fat-laden cell is a problem because the job of insulin is that when there is glucose in the blood, insulin is going to mobilize that glucose into the cell. It could easily do this because there is room in this cell. But when insulin comes and knocks at the door of this fat-laden cell and says, knock, knock, I got glucose in the blood. I need you to take it, run it through the energy factory to spit out energy. And this cell tells insulin, what, are you crazy? Don't you see that the inn is full? I got no room in the inn. If I were to bring glucose in, glucose is not going to have any place to lay its head. And so the cell refuses to open its doors to insulin. to the knocking of insulin. So he refuses to open his doors to glucose. So what happens is that that glucose cannot go through the energy factory, the mitochondria. You cannot make energy. You're deficient in energy. So that's the first way. The second, but what happens then is that because the glucose cannot enter the cell, it causes the accumulation of glucose in the blood. Okay. The accumulation of glucose in the blood now triggers the pancreas to produce too much insulin. You see, there's a one-to-one relationship between the concentration of glucose produced and the amount of insulin secreted by the pancreas. So when the concentration of glucose in the blood is high, a message is sent to the pancreas. Match this glucose by producing a high amount of insulin. And a high amount of insulin is the second way in which you develop insulin resistance. It's not good. Too much insulin is no bueno. Remember, I described insulin like the CEO of the body. It dictates the smooth functioning of the body. Imagine having a CEO of a company who is running the company smoothly and things are going well. And one day that CEO comes to work, he has gone nuts, he's gone crazy. He's backing out unreasonable demands to his employees, coming to your desk telling you, you're gonna do it my way or the highway, firing your um, your colleagues for no good reason. What's going to happen? A CEO like that who was initially running the company smoothly, when he loses that and becomes a tyrant or a bully, the employees are going to lose their respect for them. Dr. Tiffany, if you had a boss and you lost your respect for that boss, it's harder for you to do what the boss asks you to do. You're reluctant. If you don't respect somebody, it's hard for you to do what they tell you to do. So you translate that to the cell. When insulin is running high and too much, insulin is now acting as a bully and a tyrant to the cell. And the cell doesn't take kindly to that high tone. So the cell loses its respect for insulin. And when the cell loses its respect for insulin, the cell is reluctant to do what insulin asks the cell to do. And what's the thing that insulin asks the cell to do? Hey, cell, open your doors this wide so I can let glucose in. The cell, because it has lost its respect for the tyrant or the bully that insulin has become, instead of opening its doors this wide, the cell opens its doors this wide reluctantly. So what that means, if the door is narrower, less glucose is going to enter the cell. If less glucose is going to enter the cell, less glucose can run through the energy factory, less energy is going to be produced. If less glucose enters the cell, what that means is more glucose remains in the blood behind. So what that does is it causes the accumulation of even more glucose in the blood. That even more glucose in the blood causes things to go from fry pan to fire. It causes the pancreas to produce even more insulin. It means insulin goes from being a bully at this level and raises their level there. The CEO becomes even a worse tyrant. So that is how the problem of excess calories, result in insulin resistance. It starts from too much fat and that results to too much insulin, which prevents the cell from taking up glucose to making energy. So we call that insulin resistance. And when you have insulin resistance, you start having all these disease processes. um, this slide is not a slide that is exhaustive of all the disease components that we face today because of insulin resistance. It's only a small snippet of some of the disease entities. All these are coming as a result of the deficiency of energy, ATP. And I want you guys to remember 35% more calories. That's what's happening. You see, today we are eating way more than our ancestors did. We eating, they say the average American eats about 11 times a day. we are grazing like cattle on a Texas ranch, which is engaging our insulin so much that our insulin has gotten burned out. So now, that is what insulin resistance looks like. And the question I ask is, we now know the problem, one of the problems. We develop insulin resistance because of this process. So how do we fix the problem there? So we could, this slide represents the two checkpoints, checkpoint one and checkpoint two, that we can address to fix the insulin resistance problem. So I asked the question, so knowing that a deficiency of ATP from insulin resistance results in these disease entities. The next question is, so how can we fix the insulin resistance problem? So I want to present to you a solution that does just that. And this solution is called the Feel-Great system. It helps to fix the insulin resistance problem. And the Feel-Great system is made from two products. These two products are called nutraceuticals. A nutraceutical is a product that is made 100% from plants, but it is standardized, like a pharmaceutical, even though it has no medicine in it. And very standardized. There's a standard concentration in there. And nutraceuticals have way more therapeutic benefit than they have nutritional benefits. So these two products, I'm going to show you how they help us solve the insulin resistance problem. So let's start with the very first product, Unimate. It's made from a plant native to South America called the yerba mate plant. Now, the yerba mate plant is very rich in a special phytonutrient called chlorogenic acid. And we're going to use that, yeah, to be able to reverse the insulin resistance problem. Let's go to this slide. So the chlorogenic acid, oh, maybe we can use this slide so you guys stay focused on the product. The yerba mate plant is rich in this phytonutrient called chlorogenic acid. And what chlorogenic acid does is that chlorogenic acid is a special phytonutrient that that we're going to use two important properties of this phytonutrient and miss many other properties or advantages to help resolve the insulin resistance problem. The very first property of this phytonutrient is that it causes your gut to produce its own hormone called GLP-1. You guys may have heard about GLP-1. There's a GLP-1 craze going on with Ozempic, Mounjaro, and what have you. What many people don't realize is that this hormone is naturally produced by our gut to help protect us from excess calories. And it's produced when you eat the right type of phytonutrients to protect you from overconsumption of food, overnutrition. So the Unimate causes the Unimate, which contains the chlorogenic acid, causes the body to produce this hormone. The second thing it does is it has an intrinsic fat burning property. So we're going to use these two properties of it to help reverse insulin resistance. Let's talk about the GLP-1 property. I said we develop insulin resistance because 35% more calories. We're consuming too much calories than our body is supposed to handle, and so our insulin has gotten burned out. So, Dr. Tiffany, I'll get back to you. If you get burned out from your job because your employer has worked you 35% over time, the only way you recuperate from that burnout is to rest. Isn't that correct? Yeah. So what we want to do is we want to start giving our insulin rest. And the way you give your insulin rest from the burnout is by intermittent fasting. So we recommend, we're not supposed to be eating 3 meals a day. I don't think we were made to do that. Our ancestors ate a meal and a half a day. Some people think our ancestors ate 1 meal a day. So we recommend you rest your insulin by fasting for at least 16 hours. And so this is where the GLP-1 component comes in. So We want you to fast, adopt the discipline of intermittent fasting for at least 16 hours. Now, there's some people who are not able to fast without feeling like World War III is about to start. So the beauty I love about this is that when you consume this, when you consume this, it makes fasting seamless because it causes the body to produce a GLP-1. And that GLP-1 goes to, it's a satiety hormone. It goes to the hunger center of your brain, shuts off the hunger center of your brain. You don't feel hungry at all so that you can fast. And when you're fasting for that 16 hours, you're resting your insulin. So let's say you had dinner at 7 p.m. and you go to bed and you wake up at 7 a.m. You've already been fasting for 12 hours. 8 of those hours were spent sleeping. We just want to help you extend your fast by another 4 hours to 16 hours because the longer you're fasting, you're in a calorie deprived state, the longer insulin is not being called to work. Because when you don't eat, glucose is not produced. If glucose is not produced, the boss doesn't have to get up and say, hey, insulin, you got to come to work. So this product, what I do is I wake up in the morning and I make a bottle of this. It comes in a sachet like this. There is a powder. You pour the powder in it and you just mix it into the water and you just sip on it. You sip on it every 10 to 15 minutes throughout the morning. And each time you sip on the Unimate, it causes the body to produce GLP-1 and can help you extend your fast right up to 16 hours. When insulin rests, it could recuperate from its burnout. When it recuperates from its burnout, its efficiency could improve, its productivity could improve. It could go back to securing the body's energy needs. Now, the second thing is the intrinsic fat burning property of chlorogenic acid. Why is that important? It's going to help us resolve checkpoint 1 and checkpoint 2. Now, when you consume the Unimate, because it has an intrinsic property of causing fat burning, what happens is it goes to this cell, right, which is fat laden, and takes this cell back to status quo. Intrinsic fat burning. So when the cell now returns back to normal, because fat burning has occurred, the glucose that could not go into the cell that had accumulated here now has this free room to get into the cell. When the glucose gets into the cell, it can now run it through the electron transport chain to produce energy. You resolve that problem. Now, because that solves this problem, the too much fat, it now by default also solves the second problem because the first problem led to the second problem. When you had too much fat that deprived glucose from coming into the cell, it led to the accumulation of too much glucose in the blood that caused the pancreas to produce too much insulin. So now the concentration of glucose in the blood will drop, right? Because all this glucose has now been able to enter this cell. When the concentration of glucose in the blood drops, a message is sent to the pancreas. Hey, have you heard the memo? Glucose is low in the blood now. We don't need that much glucose anymore. One-to-one relationship. The pancreas now goes and decreases its tone to a low amount of insulin. And you know what low insulin is like? Low insulin is like that CEO who was initially crazy, who becomes humble. He comes to work one day and he calls his employees, to an in-service and says, listen, I've been a bad boss for the last 3 months. I've been a jerk. The things I did, the actions I took against you, I am sorry. And with a contrite and humble heart, he asks his employees to forgive him. The employees are shocked by that humility. Wow. The boss actually came and told me he wronged me this way and is asking for forgiveness. They're touched and they forgive their boss and they regain their respect back for the boss. When the boss now tells the employee jump, they'll say, how high? It's easy to do something for somebody that you respect. You translate that to the cell. When insulin is now running low, insulin has taken a humble predisposition. It comes and apologizes to the cell that it has been a bully and says, going forward, I'm going to be a good guy. I'll no longer be a bully. The cell regains its respect for insulin because insulin has become humble again. When insulin now tells the cell, open your doors this wide, the cell says, I'll be happy to. The wider the door, the more glucose goes into the cell, which can run through the energy factory to produce energy, reversing the insulin resistance problem that came as a result of energy. So that's what this does to help reverse the insulin resistance. There is another product in the protocol called balance. And balance is just simply fiber. And fiber is very, very important in reversing insulin resistance. It does that in two ways. Fiber also has a property of promoting lipolysis. The first stage in developing insulin resistance is the cell that is filled with too much fat. So fiber does the same thing by causing fat burning. So it's going to reverse insulin resistance by exactly the same mechanism. It will take care of checkpoint 1 and checkpoint 2. The other thing that fiber does is that fiber helps to rest your insulin. A fiber helps to keep your insulin humble. How does fiber do that? You see, when we eat, when we eat fibers, when we eat fiber, it slows the transit of food through the colon. And as a result, it decreases glucose absorption, carbohydrate absorption. The slower food moves through the colon, the slower absorption occurs. The slower absorption occurs. What happens is the slower the release of glucose in the blood. And I put it this way: if you and I went to an Italian restaurant to have lasagna, if you and I went to an Italian restaurant to have lasagna, and you ate your plate of lasagna without fiber, let's say that's you. You ate your plate of lasagna without fiber. Your blood sugar is going to do this. Lasagna is high in carbohydrates, and that spike in your blood sugar may be a blood sugar of 160. For me, I know a thing or two about fiber. This product is made out of fiber taken from 7 different plants. So I consume this product, the fiber, and then I have the exact same plate of lasagna, exact quantity. That's me. What's going to happen is my blood sugar is going to do this. And that blood sugar for me may be a blood sugar of 90. Okay. So you and I have eaten the exact same quantity of lasagna. The only thing I did was I consumed a good amount of fiber before that. Now, the implications of that are, since your blood sugar went up to 160, your pancreas is going to have to, your body is going to have to get on the phone and call more glucose to come to work. Hey, more glucose, you need to come to work to address this blood sugar. So maybe 20 units of insulin is going to be called to come to work. But for me, because I've only produced 90, when my body gets on the phone to call glucose insulin to come to work, it calls a smaller amount of insulin to come to work. So maybe 5 units. Remember, when insulin is burnt out, it needs rest. So the more insulin you're recruiting, the less insulin is resting. So for you, your burnt out insulin is working more. And for me, my burnt out insulin is working less. So fiber helps to give your insulin the rest that it needs, from its burnout, or the rest that it needs so that it doesn't get burnt out. Other way you can look at this is that 20 units of insulin is like the crazy CEO. Where the higher insulin is, the lesser the cells respect it. The lower insulin is, the more the cells respect it. 5 units of insulin is like the humble CEO. So I like to say insulin, fiber helps to keep your insulin humble, and the cells love a humble CEO. Who doesn't like somebody who is humble? If somebody is relating with you in a humble way, you will always love them than somebody who is relating to you in a non-humble way. The cells are no different. So now, I want to go to the second reason why we're sick, how our gut functions. Entity number two, how our gut functions. You see, our gut function depends on the population of bacteria in our gut. There is a population of about 30 to 100 trillion bacteria in our gut. Those 30 to 100 trillion bacteria have a special name called the microbiome. This is their depiction. We live in a symbiotic relationship with them. We do for them, they do for us. We scratch their back, they scratch us. As we're supposed to be their host and provide them food. Now, these bacteria secure the functions of the gut. Some of them enumerated on this slide. Now, the bacteria in the gut live in a 50-50% proportion. 50% of the bacteria in the gut are what we call bad bacteria, and the other 50% of the bacteria in the gut are what we call good bacteria. This balance is important to maintain the health of the gut. I want to highlight one important function of the gut here, and that is to help to shape and regulate the immune system. Did you guys know that 70% of the body's immune system resides in the gut? The other 30% resides in the bone marrow, the lymph nodes, the lymphatics. When the gut is healthy, the immune system is supposed to protect you against illnesses. When the gut is healthy, the immune system does just that. It protects you. When the gut is not healthy, what happens? It turns the immune system to become a terrorist. Instead of the immune system protecting you, the immune system begins to attack you. And therein lies how you develop autoimmune diseases. Now, the gut, there's something called gut imbalance. And gut imbalance is a scenario where the bad bacteria outnumber the good bacteria. What happens is you lose that 50-50% proportion, and the bad bacteria now maybe increase in number to say 70%, at the expense of the good bacteria that decrease to say 30%. Now, what causes gut imbalance? Gut imbalance is caused by the shortage of food. Now, wait a minute, Doc. You just said some slides ago that we are consuming 35% more calories than our ancestors did. So, what do you mean by gut imbalance is caused by the shortage of food? Well, it is the shortage of a particular type of food, fiber. Our diet today is so devoid of fiber, and every living organism needs nutrients. Did you know that the food for this bacteria in the gut is fiber? Every living organism, a plant, a lion in the jungle of Cameroon, a bacteria in your gut needs nutrients, and their food is fiber. So we're not consuming enough fiber. Just to put it in context, if you're a man, you're supposed to consume at least 38 grams of fiber a day. If you're a woman, you should consume at least 25 grams a day. The NIH estimates that in the United States, the average man and woman is consuming a shameful 10 to 12 grams of fiber a day. That's less than 50% of the required dietary intake. Our ancestors, is estimated that our ancestors consume anywhere from 80 to 90 grams of fiber. That's why a lot of these diseases, when we go back 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, you didn't see people walking around with high blood pressure, diabetes, or sleep apnea, or what have you. Now, what causes that? What causes this imbalance? How does fiber now cause the lack of fiber cause this imbalance? You see, anytime there is a shortage of food, it sets into motion and it causes a crisis. Anytime there's a shortage of something, there's a crisis. That crisis causes survival of the fetus. So because we're not consuming enough fiber, there is a shortage of food for the bacteria in the gut. So There is a survival of the fittest fight. The bad and good bacteria put on gloves to dwell it out. But the bad bacteria, the stronger bacteria, they win the fight. When they win the fight, they say to themselves, you know what, guys? We don't have enough fiber, enough food to feed us and to feed the bad guys. So they hoard the little food to themselves and they say, you know what? Since we don't have enough to go around for our mouths and the good guys' mouths, why don't we increase our army so we can keep a monopoly on this little food? So they increase their army now at the expense of the bad guys, and we call that God imbalance. When you have God imbalance, it now compromises the functions of the gut, and you start having disease entities like lupus, Hashimoto's, MS, celiac, all autoimmune diseases because the gut has become a terrorist. Other disease entities, colon cancer. We got Dr. Miller here. I'm sure you have seen a fair of colon cancer in your days as a as a surgeon. Now there is an abundance of evidence that colon cancer is strongly linked to deficiency of fiber. More and more, the American GI Society, has come out with a lower age limit for screening for cancers, colon cancer, compared to the American Cancer Society. I want to highlight this two disease entities at the bottom, anxiety and depression, because some people may see that here and like, wow, I didn't know that that's related to the gut. I'll be honest with you, I had no clue that anxiety and depression came from the gut principally. I only learned this 3 years ago. There is a hormone called serotonin. Serotonin is our happy hormone, and that happy hormone, 90% of it is produced in the gut. 90%. The other 10% of serotonin is produced in the central nervous system. So if you have gut imbalance, the gut is unhealthy, the factory is not going to be able to put out its product. You're now relying on just 10% to maintain mood and happiness. No wonder you have anxiety and depression. So how do you solve the gut imbalance problem? It is simple. If the gut imbalance problem is caused by fiber, deficiency of fiber, you give fiber, you begin to supplement fiber in your gut. And the balanced product, which is rich in fiber, helps to give the good guys and the bad guys enough food to eat so that there is not infighting, and helps to reverse that. So, in as much as the reason why we are sick today is because of these two things, how the body makes energy and how the gut functions, thankfully, there is now an abundance of evidence that says that if we could fix the insulin resistance problem and fix the gut imbalance problem, you could reverse those disease conditions that came as a result of those two root causes. And these two things, what these two things do is they cause a global deficiency of energy. If I'm driving a car and the car runs out of gas, that car is going to stop. The car stops not because of an intrinsic failure of the engine. No, the car stops because it has ran out of its energy source, its fuel. So if I were to walk to a gas station and bought a gallon of gas and walk back to my car on the side of the road and I put gas back in that car, I'm not going to be apprehensive for saying, oh, I hope this car starts it. That thought doesn't even cross my mind. When I get into the driver's seat, when I turn on the ignition, I expect to hear that beautiful engine sound roar again. The car starts again. So it is with the body. Many of our modern day diseases are simply the result of an energy shortage coming from insulin resistance and gut imbalance. And that energy shortage drives these diseases. If you could restore that energy shortage, just like putting gas back in that car, those diseases go away. It is so simple, but so profound. And so I'll end by saying these two products, and by the way, if you're in the medical field here, you're a pharmacist, a physician, a nurse, or what have you, you will find it interesting to know that these two products, are the only nutraceuticals listed in the prescriber's desk reference. And wonderful. Both of these two products are approved by the strictest FDA in the world, Canada's FDA. In the United States, nutraceuticals do not require FDA approval. So it's not approved by the FDA here because it does not require. But it's listed in the PDL, and I'll end by making this statement. If you suffer from any chronic medical condition, chances are it's the result of one of these two things, and the Feel Great system can help you reclaim your health again. Thank you very much, Dr. I'm going to hand it over now to Dr. Tiffany, our our double board certified physician in lifestyle medicine as well as family medicine. Dr. Tiffany, if you will share some testimonies of people's lives, and then after that, I'll let you direct all the testimonies, and we'll take some questions. Thank you.
Yes, yes. What a great presentation, as always, Dr. Dieter. And without further ado, let me get some pictures in here. Let's kind of see what we're working with or some results. How about that? We talked about the science, but how about what are the results people are having? So I myself, well, I'll get to me. So let me start with everybody else. I like to say that, look, it doesn't matter how old you are with these products. At 73, my friend Claudia here was able to get off of her type 2 diabetes medicines that she was taking for 23 years. Okay. And that's after 7 months. And then here's a nurse. So sometimes we have people in healthcare that understand, okay, look, something's not right. And she didn't feel like her body was right. She was dealing with Hashimoto's. Her TPO antibodies were way up in the 2000s, and they were actually able to come down to less than 8 with these products. But she had a lot of leaky gut issues, but was able to get off of 13 of her 15 medications. Okay, and this was in her 50s when she had all those meds. And so I like this picture here. I usually talk about Jackie. Jackie's one of my friends who was able to lose 124 pounds in 14 months, but still keeping it off. And so there's so many people, and after practicing for 20 years, even doing telemedicine across 48 states, a lot of times what I would see is people gaining that weight back. But Jackie is keeping it off. But then on top of that, her hubby did this with her. Okay, he was able to reverse his type 2 diabetes with an A1C of 7.7 to 5.0, and he lost 110 pounds and off all meds. There's something about having somebody partnering up with you. So if you're on this call and you have a buddy and you're like, oh my gosh, they need to be doing this with me, you are definitely setting yourself up for better results. Now, acne, bacne, as I like to call it. So people would be like, why would a teenager even want to use these products? Well, some of our teens suffer from serious acne, serious things that the topicals aren't doing the trick. They're trying to make the lifestyle changes, but it's not working. Well, after 6 months, we see an improvement in this. And so, my teenagers, this is a big deal. This is a big deal. And then when you do lose those large amount of weights, like Jackie and her husband, sometimes we're concerned about the skin flapping. Am I going to have another surgery to actually pay for getting the skin removed? Where Cody here was able to lose 50 pounds here and not have a lot of skin flapping. If you look at that picture, there is something about adding in the fasting that allows us to not have that skin. My friend Jim was able to get his A1C to go from 12.2 to actually 4.8. And his doctor took him off of his diabetes medications. And he had IBS, high blood pressure, so many things. And Tanya, this is one of my favorite pictures. These are one of the reasons why I love doing what I do. The quality of life change. So Tanya was able to get her A1C from 10 to 5.6 off diabetes, off high blood pressure medicine, but she was carrying around an oxygen tank 24/7. I mean, something about freeing somebody up to where they don't have to carry that tank around says so much. And Miss Catherine, and actually, I need to update my slide. I was doing a Zoom with her the other day. So after about 1 year, down actually 90 pounds, and now she's off 4 medications. Okay. And this is why I'm doing this for helping people get off medications everywhere, anywhere where it's possible. My friend Ro checked her A1C one time at work because she's in the healthcare field. And she said, oh my gosh, my A1C is over 14. Over 14. We start diagnosing type 2 diabetes when your A1C is over 6.4. And so she was able to get it down to 5.9. And I love that for her. And myself, like so many other people, so many professional moms, so many caregivers, we put ourselves on the bottom of the list and it becomes something that we don't deal with. And we start struggling. We start struggling with cortisol, weight gain, belly weight gain, not sleeping well. I was on high blood pressure medicine. I was on antidepressants, but I actually started using these products after I was doing a vegan lifestyle for 6 months. Vegan lifestyle. I was able to lose 30 pounds with that vegan lifestyle, but my blood pressure didn't go anywhere. It wasn't until I incorporated these products that I was able to get off of my blood pressure medicine, my antidepressant, and stopped having my hot flashes and my migraines. And Dr. Esther, and I didn't see her on this call because I always love to
She's
have her
on
on.
now. She's on now.
Oh, she's on now. Well, we'll
Yeah.
probably get her to tell her story later, but she looks fabulous in the same dress. Okay. Another woman putting herself on the back end, running around with all the kids. And, oh, I went too fast because I want to show my skin tax picture. I'm going to get back to your dad, Dr. Dieter. And you, skin tax. Okay, this is one of the things that people think aren't related to insulin resistance, but they most certainly are. And this is my friend who swore she was the healthiest person in the world. You know, all the healthiest one of our friends, right? And so, I mean, doing all the things, all the exercise. I mean, I was at her house and she gets and does jumping jacks every morning, about 100 of them. She came down and said, "Yeah, I just did 100 jumping jacks." Well, anyhow, when she started doing the product, she wanted to prove me wrong, so she took a picture. And on May 2nd, she was like, "Okay, I had these skin tags since they're supposedly related. Let me see." Well, June 24th, as you notice in this picture, those skin tags improved. Okay. So, yes. And Dr. Dieter, of course, our speaker for tonight, lost 14 pounds in 2 months, but improved his cholesterol. And this was even after he was already doing intermittent fasting. Okay. Already doing intermittent fasting and running by that. So I love always showing his picture because it's like, I'm doing all the things. Why do I need this? This amplifies you doing those lifestyle changes. And Pastor James has a long list of 12 things that have improved with being on these products. And I love this as a leader because you're representing what your people need to be doing. So, blood pressure better, off the CPAP machine, making a huge difference in his life. And Dr. Dieter's dad. This is what makes this so much fun, being able to help our family. I know Dr. Dieter's just smiling from ear to ear about his dad. I mean, A1C 7.1 to 6.4, and this is roughly since August. So almost what, a 6 month time frame? No, not even like 7 months if I'm doing the math right. And Dr. Dieter's twin sister. And I never like to say people look gorgeous because they're smaller, because she looked gorgeous in that first picture. But it's the health, right? It's us getting the health. Our visceral fat, which is right around our midsection, is what puts us at risk for heart disease and strokes, the things that take us out of here. And I'm probably going to end on this because Keith is going to actually pop up and tell his story. But this is a nice visual of him losing the 90 pounds. But his story is so much huger than this. And we show these pictures, and weight loss is so obvious on these pictures, but it's the quality of life. It's the lab data changes that are actually making such a huge difference in people's lives. So thank you for allowing me to share that, Dr. Dieter. And of course, that's Keith. Keith's in the house about to share his ridiculous story. Stuff people wouldn't believe is true, but it is so true. And I love hearing it every time you share it.
Thank you, Dr. Tiffany. I was type 2 diabetic for 25 years. And in that time, I never got off one medication. Every time I went to the doctor, something got increased or something got added. And it kind of came to a head. I was like Roe. When I found out I was diabetic, my A1C just said greater than 14. And I fought for 25 years trying to manage it. And the lowest I ever got it to was 7.5. And that was a year ago about. But in 2018, I was already seeing signs of my eyes failing. I was starting to have vision problems. I'd gotten diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder, Guillain-Barré, if you don't know, destroys your immune or your
Nervous system.
yeah, neural nervous system. And I was left in so much pain it wasn't even funny, and I couldn't walk. And it left me with wounds that wouldn't heal as my diabetes progressed. And like I said, the pain was unbearable. The neuropathy, I could barely move even when I could walk. And in November of 24, I developed a foot ulcer, pretty good sized one. And in January, I was treated for 6 weeks before I went in the hospital. My daughter came over and found it. that I had gone septic. I was unresponsive. They took me to the hospital, and 2 days later, I died. I was gone for just under a minute, and it was on the day of my daughter's gender reveal party. She was finding out she was getting a boy. I was getting my first grandson, and I was this close to not I was so close to not even being there to enjoy it. And in that first picture, that's what it looked like in January. That was after they cut the cast off when I was at the hospital. And when I got out of the hospital, I went right into 2 months of hyperbaric chamber, 2 months of wound vacs and knee scooters so I could at least try and move around a little bit. And that's as far as it got until July, well, June. And 3.5 months on the protocol, you'd never even know it was there. It was completely gone. I've had two toenails come off that were having issues and nice, beautiful ones underneath of them. And my foot doctor can finally feel a pulse in my feet. He hasn't been able to feel that in years. He just stood there. He checked it like 3 times because he wasn't sure if he felt it. And but when I got out of the hospital, I knew I had to do something. I didn't think I was as bad off as I was, but I knew I wasn't the healthiest either. And I knew I had to do something or I wouldn't be here. And I would have never gotten to meet my grandson and left my young daughter. And I found this protocol in May of last year, and I watched for a while because over the years, I tried to get in the gym, but I didn't have enough energy. I was taking, if somebody came across the screen and said, here it is, I was the first to jump on it. And none of it all worked for about 2 weeks. And then I'd get hungry and feel deprived, and then I'd start eating. And so my grandson was born in June of last year. 4 days later, I ordered the protocol, received it on my birthday, and I started taking it. And right away, I mean, day one, my energy was through the roof. I had so much energy, I wanted to get back in the gym, which hadn't happened in 30 years, almost 30 years. And on day two, because if you're diabetic like I was checking my blood sugar 4, 5 times a day, 6 times a day sometimes. I was off my insulin 108 units in 2 days. And within the first 2 weeks, I noticed I was happier. I had no idea I was even depressed, to be honest with you. I knew I wasn't in the greatest mood, but I didn't think I was as depressed as I was. And that was gone. And then it spiraled from there. And my doctor knew I was doing this. And so we were visiting the first 2 or 3 months almost weekly. And by the end of month number two, I was off 14 medication, all but one, off all my insulin. I had dropped 60 pounds. I felt amazing. And by the time I got to the 90 days, I had seen my eye doctor. I was no longer getting injections in my eyes. I was the my doctor told me it was the best he'd seen my eyes in over 4 years. My cardiologist, my AFib had gone away, and she saw no reason for it to come back. My blood pressure had normalized. She took me off the final med. My pulmonologist said I've left him nothing to complain about. I mean, all my doctors are literally amazed by it. My foot doctor's now sharing it with his patients because he saw what it did for me. And I mean, at 90 days, I was down 75 pounds. My A1C had dropped from a 7.5 to a 5.4. I was down from a 4X to an extra large shirt, size 50 to a size 36 pants. And I've now been on it 8 months. and I'm down 97 pounds, 15 inches on my waist. I'm stronger than I ever was. I've got so much. I now look forward to seeing my grandson graduate high school, and he's only 6 months, 7 months old. And, if you'd have told me I would be able to do this 8 months ago, 9 months ago, I'd have told you were crazy. I really would. I got to spend Christmas with my grandson, and I went from not being able to walk to where I was pushing him around the store in a cart, making race car noises and having the time of our lives. He just left my daughter in the dust, and we just took off. And he was just laughing and giggling, and I never thought I was going to get to see that, let alone experience it. And it it changed my life. It truly did. It saved my life, to be honest with you. So, I mean, I know some of it sounds crazy, and if I wouldn't have lived it, I may not have believed it either. But it truly works. And I know, like Dr. Dieter and Dr. Tiffany, I know thousands of people that it's helping every single day get your life back on track.
Yes. My goodness. I love it. I love it. How about if there was just one person? If Keith was the only story, this would still be worth it. But he's not the only story, right, Dr. Dieter? Your
Uh,
story is crazy. I love it. I love hearing it every time. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
thank you. Keith, thank you for sharing your story. And we this is why we're doing this. We're doing this to spotlight the fact that there is hope for the things we're suffering from today. I think that every reasonable person, if you were given a chance to address the root cause of your illness, and be free and experience true and lasting health and get up medicines, I think that every reasonable person will want to address the root cause and not continue to suffer. And so, thank you for sharing that. And I hope that inspires your story, inspires others that there is hope out there. And I will close by saying this, guys. This modern day diseases that we have today are due to those two simple things. If you went back 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, our ancestors never suffered from these things, because they did not live and eat in the way that we do today. And if we can restore the root cause, we address those two root causes, you could experience true and lasting health. And that's what this does. So I want you guys, if you're on here today for the first time, I want you to see this as a message of hope. That you could reclaim your health again. You can take back control of your health. So if you're suffering from any chronic medical issue, take a chance. You can take back your health. We want to spread this message of hope to as many people as possible. We do these calls every Sunday and Monday at exactly the same time. So we're going to be doing this again tomorrow, the same time, the same link. If you were on here today for the very first time and you say, man, this was good. I wish that my cousin was here to hear this. Or I wish my friend who has sleep apnea was here to hear this. Or I wish my uncle who had diabetes were here to hear this. Well, we're doing a repeat of this tomorrow. And give them the same link that you used to log in on today and invite them to listen to this message of hope. As a message of hope that we want to take to our communities, is a message of hope that we want to take to as many people as possible. And we are always looking for people to help us spread this message of hope. So if you listen to this and this entices you, I want to be part of this hopeful message, bringing hope to people's health, and you will want to be part of this, please reach out to the person who invited you today and says, I want to be part of this. I want to be part of spreading this news. And they can give you information on how you can join us, join this team. It is our desire that in the year 2026, we want to touch and impact the health and lives of at least 100,000 people. And the more of us spreading that message of hope, the more it is possible. So thank you guys very much to my panel, Keith, Dr. Tiffany. I know we did not get a chance to highlight the other doctors who were on here, but thank you guys for helping with this. Keith, thank you for your testimony. Dr. Tiffany, thank you for helping highlight those other testimonies. And please bring a friend tomorrow, bring an uncle tomorrow, bring a co-worker tomorrow. Let them hear the same message of hope. And if you're interested by any chance in the recording of this was recorded. Reach out to the person who invited you. We can get you a recording of this. Thank you and good night.